Today we're visiting writer, designer, and photographer Sara Silm at her home in the heart of France's Béarn region. Built in the 1830s, Sara's home embodies the romance of French country living, with soft stone walls, cozy rooms, and sunlit windows overlooking the rolling countryside. It's the space that inspired Sara to write her book, How to French Country. In this episode, Sara takes us through her beautiful home, from the warm country kitchen to an elegant dining room and bedrooms where her own wallpaper designs mingle beautifully with traditional French antiques. Outside, she shows us her converted barn, an idyllic countryside escape brought to life through her signature style. Along the way, Sara shares some ingenious tips for upcycling antique woodwork.
I actually made this with a local carpenter. It's actually the side of an old bed that is beautifully carved, and the bed had been destroyed by kind of woodworm, and this one panel was all that remained. So he beautifully made this this surround for the range hood, and I love it.
In her kitchen, she also shares a French essential that's as practical as it is charming.
There's, I think, one piece of equipment that I could never ever live without, and it's a French food safe. So it's perfect for when you go to the markets and buy berries or fruit or cheese that you want to have at room temperature before you serve it. You keep it all in there. It's behind mesh, and so your fruit flies can't attack the fruit before you eat it. And the cheeses obviously need to be eaten at room temperature, so they are perfect when you serve them.
Throughout the home, heirlooms and found treasures tell stories of generations past.
One of my favorite things that we inherited in the house, and this is a portrait. On the back of it, we know who it was. It was a woman called Julia. It was painted by her sister.
Sara has lived a life that spans continents, from Australia to Kazakhstan to England and now France, and her home captures every chapter of that journey, layered together in an effortless style that feels quintessentially French. To watch Sara's full home tour ad-free, where she shows us a cozy sitting room perfect for sipping an apéro, and 2 guest bedrooms layered with colorful prints and patterns, scan the QR code or click the join button below. You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story. I'm Allison Kenworthy, the founder of Homeworthy, and we take you inside the world's most beautifully decorated homes and introduce you to the brilliant people who live there.
Hi Homeworthy, I'm Liz Lang. Welcome to Grey Gardens.
Click the join button below to access all of our latest episodes ad-free and watch extended cuts of this and other homes, opening the doors to new rooms and exclusive content featuring our beloved hosts.
I can't wait to see, I'm so excited.
And if you're looking to shop items inspired by this and other Homeworthy tastemakers, be sure to use the product links below or scan the QR code on screen to find fabulous furniture, coffee table books, and accessories that can transform your house into a home.
Hi Homeworthy, I'm Sara. Welcome to my house in southwest France. Come on in. Hi, my name's Sara Silm. I'm an interior designer, writer and photographer, and welcome to my house in southwest France. So how did I end up in France? It's a really long story. It's a bit like one of those stories about an Irishman, an Englishman, and an American went into a bar. In fact, it was in a bar in Almaty, Kazakhstan, that we were eating curry in an Irish bar. And our English friend said to my husband and I, who are both Australians, "You're looking for a house in France." There's a holiday house at that time. And he said, why don't you look in the Béarn region of southwest France, because you love to ski and you love the beach and you love hiking in the mountains, you love rivers and all of that kind of thing. And so it was thanks to that curry in a downtown Almaty Irish pub with an English friend that we actually found the house. So the story of our home was really very last minute. So I basically looked at a few houses in the area, some of them disastrous, as you often do in France, with umbrellas in the lounge room with torrential rain and holes in the roof, and projects far bigger than we could actually envisage or have the budget for. And then at the last minute, it was one of those serendipitous moments where I looked on the internet and I saw this amazing house that had been empty for a few decades, and there was something about it that I think it read orchard, stream at the back of the garden, small chateau in a tiny village, and I thought, that sounds perfect. So we had 20 minutes to view it, and I think I made it 3 meters into the hallway, and that was that. We just fell in love with it. But the state of the house itself at that time was also pretty basic. So the first 12 months of renovating was really camping. We didn't have earths in the electricity. We had to start from scratch. We had to do the roof, the electrics, the plumbing. And I basically just swept out one room, lived in a room, worked on other rooms. I did all the papering and decoration myself, carted bucket loads of rubble one by one out and down the hallways. And really it took me a year to get the house into a livable state before I could then bring my precious children down and put them in one room at that stage until things were what I would consider safe and livable. So this is our kitchen, and this is where we spend pretty much all our time, I think, as most families do. So when we bought the house, this table was here, and it has pretty much stayed in the same spot. It was a little bit further away, but it's virtually the table we eat at every night, even though we have a dining room. But it's funny because we will do some more work to the house and a bigger extension very shortly off this kitchen. And when I told the children that we were about to extend the kitchen and change it quite radically, the children all just said, well, you just can't get rid of this table, because this is where this is where we've grown up. So this table was here, and we just have a bit of a collection of old and new chairs. The heart of the home really is this duck egg blue Aga, and it runs pretty much every month except for summer when it's too hot. And it really is not just for cooking, it's a kind of people magnet and dog magnet, as they tend to be. And the kitchen itself I designed with a company quite a long time ago, about 11 years ago. So it was before Brexit, and we brought all of the kitchen joinery over in a truck and put it all together, and I painstakingly hand painted all of the cabinets. We actually weirdly have two cookers or stoves. We have the Aga, which is on kind of 9-10 months of the year, and is not just for cooking, it's more for for heating. It's lovely to lean against. It's a bit of a dog magnet. And then when it's summertime, pretty much most of the time we're cooking outside on our barbecue, but we also have a Le Conche in the next room that I'll show you in a minute. So the floors are all tumbled travertine marble, very serviceable with 2 dogs and a busy family. They never show the dirt, so they're terrific. And the stone walls are all local stone, with the joins are all made from lime mortar, which allows the building to breathe. So the walls themselves are about 60 centimeters thick, and in the height of summer, when it's really really hot outside, it just is, walking inside is like walking into air conditioning. We would never ever need to cool the house artificially, so it's wonderful. Well, like most houses in France, I've got a lovely collection of copper pots and utensils, and they're constantly used. I also have a little stone sink here, and that is where we pretty much wash vegetables from the garden, herbs, arrange flowers, and our drinking water is delicious. It's actually from the mountain, so it's the purest, most wonderful water, and so that just comes straight out of the tap. Over here there's, I think, one piece of equipment that I could never ever live without, and it's a French food safe. So it's perfect for when you go to the markets and buy berries or fruit or cheese that you want to have at room temperature before you serve it. You keep it all in there. It's behind mesh, and so your fruit flies can't attack the fruit before you eat it. And the cheeses obviously need to be eaten at room temperature, so they are perfect when you serve them. And it is constantly used. We also have an extremely cheeky standard poodle who steals food off the benches. So if I bake a cake, it goes straight in there for that exact reason. So it is more of a, the word garde-manger is more relevant when you have a naughty poodle. So all the windows in the house are exactly the same style, and lovely big windows. This one, they're all single glass, so they're not particularly efficient in terms of heating, but they're beautiful, and it brings in the light. And we often will just have them open, and the kitchen just fills with this song. You can hear it a little bit, the bird song from the garden, which is a dream. These lights came from a railway station in the UK. They were reclaimed, and we just felt that they were perfect to hang from these old beams. The beams are originally really heavy, dark, stained oak timber, and I painted them that kind of paler grey just to kind of lighten up this space, because it felt quite heavy in its original dark timbered state. I tend to cook a lot. We're on the border of Spain here, so a lot of Spanish cooking, you're cooking in these lovely terracotta bowls, which are oven-proof and fireproof. You can put them on to fire, you can put them straight into the oven and onto the table. So they're really practical, and I just have a collection of different sizes. This is perfect for crème catalan and local dishes, clafoutis and things like that. And they just live permanently by the Aga, ready to use mixing bowls. They've all come from antique markets or vide-grenier, flea market stalls, which is really my kind of sport of choice, I suppose. This side is just bits and pieces. Mothers can never get rid of all the things their children make at preschool, and so they all sit there on the shelf. And this is a lovely, I use these, I love to drink tea out of a teacup and saucer. So this is my arsenal of teacups that I've collected over the years. And we used to live in Russia, so there's some beautiful Russian porcelain and Chinese porcelain. It just kind of depends on the day which one I choose, but they're all very, very much loved. Yeah. So this room here is what we call the butler's pantry, and originally when we moved into the house, this was the kitchen, although the original kitchen is another room to the other side. But this we use as a laundry and a summer kitchen. So this is on the go during summer if we need to use a stove, and it's where all the prep work happens, and it's quite handy because you can throw all your plates and things if you're entertaining in here for dealing with a bit later. And in here I used a combination of new and old joinery, so what I could salvage was actually quite good because it was solid oak. And so the cabinets on this wall are original that I repainted. And the floors are encaustic tiles that were made by hand by a father and daughter in Andalusia in Spain. And I designed them on the screen and dropped in the colours to kind of talk back to the Aga in the other room. And they're great. They're so serviceable, constantly being muddy poured, but they work really well. So this window is like every other window in the house. They're all the same dimensions. But I really use my window sill as my kind of seasonal cue for cooking. So when I go to a market, I come back and just empty out all the produce onto the windowsill. And we kind of shop daily in France most of the time. So anything fresh can sit out on the windowsill. And then when it comes to cooking a meal, I just kind of delve into these baskets. So that's really like my my pantry on a shelf. So a lot of the lamps in the house are old lamps that I found in flea markets, and I literally just do a gesso kind of undercoat over the actual fabric on the shade and then paint over the top of them, so they're fully recycled, and you see them kind of dotted around the house. But it's a great way of taking a, maybe 50-cent or $1 piece of furniture and then making it your own. So the style of the house is more what in France we call a maison de maître, which is not necessarily the chateau that it's known to be, although in the village we live in the street of the chateau. It's quite a humble house. It's not a big, grand castle by any means, but it was built by a French general, and it's built in the local stone. It was built around, we believe, 1830s, so it's not particularly old by French standards, although our village itself, the church, is 12th century, so it's a very old village. And I think what really drew me to the architecture was that the materials are all very earthy and humble. There's basically stone and what we call enduit, which is a natural lime mortar. It feels soft and it doesn't feel imposing. So, and the rooms, remarkably, are quite small rooms. So there's really never a moment when you're in any space in the house where it feels overwhelming or too grand. It's a very other people might not describe it this way, but I would say humble house in that it's very lived in, and it for me at least feels like a home where you just sink into a chair by the fire, and the feather cushions just wrap you up and you're home. And that's, I hope, the way other people feel when they're here. So this room here is what we call the snug, and it's where we spend most evenings by the fire. These sofas, the armchairs and the sofa, were actually in the house, and they are so well made. They're probably old English sofas. I'm not sure how they ended up here, but I just made slipcovers and it's great. I just throw Turkish towels on top, Turkish beach towels, and our dogs actually spend a lot of time on them, as well as me. And it's where I spend my evenings, very old-fashioned kind of pursuits, like doing tapestry and listening to books in front of the fire. That's really my evening of choice, but it's almost always in here. In this room, this was the original kitchen. So the big mantelpiece that you can see here is where all the meals would have been cooked, where our new fireplace is currently. And we decided to put this fireplace in because we kept it as an open fire for so long, but it was very inefficient because it would suck all the air from everywhere else in the house because it's such a huge fireplace. So we put this one in. It's by a French brand called Godin, and it's a slow combustion, so it's much more efficient, but it seems to kind of slip in quite nicely. So the sculptures are mostly mine. I have sculpted all my life, all the way from university. And so the white one here I did when I was living in Moscow. I studied under an amazing Russian sculptor who did a lot of the very famous bronze sculptures in the Moscow metro. So he was a wonderful teacher. And there's other bits and pieces outside and inside of sculptures I've done over the years. The painting here is on the wall is by an unknown artist, but I bought it recently at a big brocante market not far from here. And the lamp is by Bertie Fortescue from the UK. Here is a collection of some of my cookbooks that have been amassed over many, many years. And this shelf is really the shelf that are the books that really are my go-to everyday books. And I think one of the ways I love to use this room is to make a cup of tea, sit in my chair, grab a book, and depending on what I've bought at the market, just search the index until I find the ingredient, and it is a pure joy. It's probably one of my favorite things to do. So these are the favorites. So this chair here is a chair I picked up at a brocante sale about a year or two ago. And what I really love about this chair is that I was looking for something with a neutral colour fabric. That one of my best scores at antique markets is if I can find a chair with fabric that is good to go, that we don't need to replace. And I tend to not mind the fabric being really old. And when I saw this one, I was so thrilled because it was just perfect, that kind of neutral that marries in with this cowhide on the ground. And when I lifted up the cushion, I discovered that it must have spent a very long life in the sun because it's a velvet. And when you look at the opposite side of the cushion underneath, it was originally turquoise, and over the years, you can see it on the side, the original colour, and over the years it faded, and I love that. I just love that what we have here is completely irreplaceable. It's time and sun, and it's totally original and perfect. So it's one of my favourite chairs, actually. So I studied interior design, colour theory and surface design, and then later went on to teach all those things in Sydney at the International School of Colour and Design. And at the same time, I started my own interior design business, and that was also linked to some freelancing work in magazines, writing travel articles, interior styling articles, and styling itself. So really, I've had my longest period of my career has been in magazines. And I also went on to do a collaboration with Sandberg Wallpaper, where we actually designed a series of wallpapers that celebrates the connection between the current Swedish family's royal roots here in my region of France, in the Béarn, and Sweden, where Sandberg Wallpaper is produced. So it's a real homage to the Swedish royal family, who Sandberg are the official purveyors to the royal court with their wallpapers. So that's been another thing, and I recently wrote a book called How to French Country. And that was really an amalgamation of everything I've really done in magazines, writing, photography, styling. But it was wonderful because I had a chance to take my time, write it in real time, and actually shoot a little vignette in the barn in real time, so that I could walk through the process of design and all the things to think about at each stage as it was happening, and shoot it whilst I was actually doing a lot of the renovation, because it just happened to fall during COVID. So that kept things very interesting. Okay, so this is the dining room, and it was always the dining room. So we've got the original bronze chandelier, which weighs a ton. And this fireplace, I believe I was told by the previous owner that the fireplace is carved from wood that was brought back from Indochina by the French general who built the house originally. So it is a huge part of its history, and to have that lovely story is really special because it's not an indigenous wood to France. It's often where we will light an open fire and have guests, but it's an intimate dining room. It's not a massive room, so again, it doesn't feel too grand. It feels, almost like another extension of the kitchen. So in this room, I have one of the wallpapers from my Le Village collection with Sandberg wallpapers of Sweden, and it's called Fig Garden, and it comes in a number of colorways. This blue is perfect, I think, and it was inspired by the potager garden here at the chateau, and also our fig garden, and we have prolific figs all through, late summer and early autumn, kind of just finished actually. So it's perfect, I think, for this room, which is all about food and often features figs when they're in season. So I love the movement in the vines traveling up, which kind of accentuates the height of the room and really leads your eye upwards, and you get to appreciate the beams, and on the other side the windows, and the scale of the room feels both kind of large but also intimate at the same time. All of the wood in the room I painted in chalk paint from a Dutch company called Authentico, and it's a matte finish. It's lovely to work with. I really enjoy painting with it, but it chips. The dogs scratch the doors. It's very much lived in, but for me that feels much nicer than a high gloss modern surface. And these doors were originally in this alcove, and they led into the second, not the original kitchen, but the kitchen I inherited when I moved in. And so we took them out of there and used that as a kind of alcove for the drinks table and the drinks tray. And we knocked this hole here through. It was never there. We made this entrance, and then we reinstated the doors going into the snug. And it's actually really nice, because in winter, if it's particularly cold, we can actually close these doors up and then keep the heat in that room. So, yeah. This is actually really funny. People often talk about all the bits and pieces on top of the mantelpiece, but to be perfectly honest, when I was unpacking the house, I had a delivery of things that were in storage when we used to live in Moscow, and things that came over from Australia that had been in storage for many, many years. And so they all arrived almost on one day, and I was unwrapping them and unpacking them, and just kind of plonking them up there. And this is the honest truth, that is where they've stayed. I honestly really haven't ever touched that shelf. So there's Staffordshire dogs. There's this beautiful marble bust that was actually in the house. There's a whole bunch of little bits and pieces that I've collected over the years, and one of my sculptures on the end that was that I made when I was pregnant with my second child. I felt enormous, and I hope my sculpture conveys that. This table I found at a charity antique shop. There's a few of them in France called Emmaüs, and I think it was all of about 40 euros. So we literally just sanded the top and oiled it, and then I painted the legs underneath. It's not a particularly special table in terms of its value or its style. It's fairly commonly found in antique shops, but I also wanted a table like that because I feel you can be very precious about really old pieces and not use them for that reason. And so this one is used constantly, and we're not precious about it. So the price tag was somewhat helpful in it being designated as a kind of everyday table. And the chairs are really not very special. They're kind of very French country. They're new, they're not antique, but they kind of slip in quite nicely as well. These pots on the table are traditional to this area. They're from Les Landes, the next area up from the Béarn, and very often used and found in Béarnese houses. But they're confit pots, so farmers would have made their confit duck, which is from, typical for this area, and they would have been filled with confit duck and then had a layer of duck fat on top. And then generally you find them if in their authentic state with paper, just newspaper on top, and often stuck to the rims. So these are very typical of this area. So I suppose this house has really informed my design style. I tend to take each project, I work around what I have. So we were very lucky to inherit, furniture, artwork, and even in the desk in the study there was monogram stationery and fountain pens. It was extraordinary, books. So that was really the basis. I wanted to honour the history of the building and the things that were left here for me. So the objective for me was really to as the custodian of the house, was to really work with what I had and build on that and add my own touch. So everything that was in the house pretty much was kept. And then it was just layered with our life, I suppose. So we've lived in Russia, in Kazakhstan, Australia, the UK. We've done extensive travels all over the world. So, various layers of our life were then incorporated. And I suppose it is us. I guess that's the only way I can describe it. It really is just an amalgamation of all of us and each chapter of our life, and they kind of all happily slotted in and sang the same chorus, I suppose. So I have to introduce you to the dogs because they will not let me keep filming without introducing them. So this is Adelaide, our standard poodle, and this little fellow here is Stanley, who's a wire-haired dachshund. So this is the entrance hall, and we have the original staircase. We added a runner from Roger Oates in the UK that's custom mitered on the corners. It's a beautiful woolen runner that just makes the difference between when it was just bare wood and with a wool runner is amazing, especially in winter when you're kind of padding down the stairs in bare feet. So that we added. I also added this wallpaper. I think it's now, it's not current anymore, sadly, but it's a wallpaper by Little Green in the UK. And I think just, again, with that lovely movement of the kind of Les Indiens design, it kind of leads you visually upwards and upwards to the second story. So I think it works really beautifully and ties in really nicely with the original tiles that are here in the hallway. So this is an original chest that was here in the house. It was exactly right here where it stands. It hasn't moved. And above it is one of my favorite things that we inherited in the house. And this is a portrait. On the back of it, we know who it was. It was a woman called Julia. It was painted by her sister, and it is exquisite because if you look at the finer details, the lace work on her dress is translucent. You can see this beautiful pale skin underneath, And what's really funny is she's painted in that kind of Mona Lisa style, so her eyes follow you no matter where you are in the room. And as soon as we arrived, the children were completely spooked by her because she would follow them upstairs to bed, her eyes. And so they now look at her, but for a while there, I think I was the only one who actually made eye contact with Julia, but she is beautiful. And I think a lot of French paintings like this, you have symbolism. So the lilac that she has in her hands is often a symbol that she's betrothed and that she is to be married. So perhaps it was a portrait that was painted of her before her wedding. And the urn behind her often was in paintings to symbolize that she was from nobility or wealth. So there's a lot going on in the painting besides just beautiful Julia, whose eyes follow you everywhere. So this furniture at the end here is a piece I found again at a brocante for very, very little. I think I paid perhaps 30 euros for it. And I mixed a colour that would go with the veins of the marble and painted that in chalk paint. So it's very like an original paint anyway that would have been on a piece of furniture. Just to kind of lighten it up and make it kind of sit more happily amongst this wallpaper. And it's such a lovely part of the hallway because in the afternoons you get this fabulous kind of shadows and light here. And it's just obviously filled with all what my husband calls my junk, all my inherited and collected old bottles and pots and whatnot. Useless stuff really, but things that I love. And so this room is my son's room, and as soon as he moved out and went to university, I redecorated it for his future wife or partner. So I feel that this is my service as a mother to future members of our family, because it was really a teenage den before that. So this is a wallpaper from the collection with Sandberg, and it's called Montfort Toile, and it actually features all the things I love about the Pyrenees. So there's tree, the trees that you often will see throughout the forests, as well as our poodle Adelaide, who is dutifully sitting under a tree. And there's the swallows that come and go that with the seasons. They're called the hirondelle, and so that's another very typical Béarnese or Basque bird, and I love it. There's also shepherds which come up and down depending on the season from the mountains. So yeah, this is very close to my heart. And Adelaide, and here she is. This is the star of the. If you sit down, Adelaide, sit down, sit, good girl. So there she's doing her pose. This is what she's doing in the wallpaper. She does this exact pose. There you are. She's got slippery paws, but this is what she does in the wallpaper. She's an experienced wallpaper model. So this is another Indian block printed fabric, and there's a great source for these kinds of fabrics called Tissus de Helen in London, in Chelsea Harbour Design Centre. And I just lined the back of it with a really affordable ticking from another shop in London called The Cloth Shop. And the bed itself, I think I found it was almost being given away at one of the brocantes, so I just painted it again with Authentico chalk paint, and that's the bed that every teenage boy when he comes home shudders when he walks into his bedroom to find this, what he calls the princess bed. But you know what, it's my service to future women. So this room is my daughter Annabelle's bedroom, and this wallpaper is called Annabelle in her honour, and it's another one from the Le Village collection with Sandberg. and it's all her kind of favourite flowers. And it's a big room with high ceilings, and this kind of darker, deeper wallpaper felt really cozy. And before we put it up, it felt quite cold and empty. So she loves coming home to this room. So the fireplaces in the house are often, a lot of them are this pink marble, which is I suppose just a local marble that was very popular at the time. But it goes perfectly with these pink flowers in the design. I found this chair on another site in France that's really great for sourcing antiques called Le Bon Coin. And I showed it to my husband, who flatly refused to have it in the house unless it was recovered. But of course, this is a Pierre Frey fabric, and I love it. So it will just silently work its way into a room, and he will love it. He will learn to love it. But I love it. It's a fantastic fabric, and so great when you can find an old chair that actually has a beautiful fabric that can stay on it, rather than the costs of reupholstery. In terms of the lifestyle here in the southwest of France, for us, not just for me, but the whole family, it's all about the landscape, and it is an absolute pleasure of ours. You really have to take in the Pyrenees and the Basque Coast to hike it, to walk it, to really feel this beauty that we're surrounded by. It's extraordinary. So we're kind of nestled into these permanently green foothills of the Pyrenees here in the Béarn. We're right on the border of the Basque country. And I suppose every weekend we are pretty much hiking those hills, and in the winter we ski them. And then in summer, you kind of nestle into the sand dunes in Osagara and those kind of lovely beaches on the Basque coast, and swim and have an apéro and drive home. It's amazing. So this is the what we call the walled garden. It's a lovely, really perfect garden to spend time in during the afternoon, because it gets the afternoon sun. And it's the way that we approach the gîte, which is an old barn that used to be used to make wine for personal consumption and to dry tobacco leaves. And then when we bought the house, it was full of corn and wood. And so that was really my vignette, I suppose, in terms of when I wrote my book, in terms of how to walk readers through the process of how to tackle essentially a mini home, because it's 2 bedrooms, a kitchen and 1 bathroom and a living room. So kind of everything everyone has in their own home, but to kind of walk them through photographically and with words through the process of how I design and work. So come on in. So this is essentially what this whole room was actually 2 barns with a wall in the middle that we knocked out. And we started this kitchen from scratch. So, in my book you can see it as just a void. It was literally just 4 walls. And we put the French doors in, and I built this island bench really cheaply out of red bricks that we then used the traditional lime mortar on top of. And then just joinery that was slotted in, so that we created a space for people to sit on a kitchen stool at the bench, and then joinery and dishwasher and all the practical things on this side. And I found this armoire behind me, or kitchen dresser, at one of these charity places in France called Emmaüs. And I think, again, it was perhaps 50 euros. It was nothing. And I painted it in this beautiful, I think it's one of my favorite French blues, and it's called Code Blue by Authentico, a Dutch paint company. And it's in a chalk paint, so it's lovely and soft. And I sanded the bench tops, which are oak, and it kind of has a kind of ever-changing collection of old plates and bits and pieces on its shelves, but is essentially a very, very practical storage space and much needed piece of furniture for the kitchen. So the pendants I found on eBay, they were again very, very affordable. Just had the fixtures made and attached to the old beams. The beams were all sandblasted, so they're just completely raw and unfinished oak beams, the originals that were here, and we cut the opening for the mezzanine into it so that the light can travel up to the next floor. The kitchen is really simple. It's just open shelving with really rustic old curtains. The Le Conche stove, I think, is a bit of a staple here in France and around the world, a fantastic stove for cooking on. And the mantle above it, the hood, the range hood, I actually made this with a local carpenter. It's actually the side of an old bed that is beautifully carved, and the bed had been destroyed by kind of woodworm, and this one panel was all that remained. So he beautifully made this this surround for the range hood, and I love it. I was thrilled when I sent this one piece of wood to him and it came back like this. It was great. So this table here took 6 incredibly strong Basque men, and if anyone's actually ever met a Basque man, you would realize that these are very, very strong, robust men, and all of them had red faces. It's a solid piece of exotic wood, I think, on top, and an oak base that I painted. And because it took 6 of them to move it in here, this is where it will stay forever. I don't think it will go anywhere. But it's a great table. It has extenders that go on either end if we have really big gatherings, which we often do. We often celebrate big family events in here. So it's a much loved piece of furniture. This entrance here is new. We knocked the wall, the stone wall that was separating the 2 barns out to create this entrance. And because of the change with this kind of wall coming out, I decided that I didn't want any lighting, any artificial, lighting above the table. It was just, it's just a table for candlelight, which is something I would encourage people to do if you can, if you're at this point of a build. I think to design a table that is not lit, that you can light with candles, is one of the most wonderful things, and everyone looks much, much better in candlelight. So it's also a very, very good thing for your friends. They'll love you for it. And then it kind of continues down and down a step, which is great because this step down into the lounge room, because it's one giant open plan space, the step kind of demarcates the kitchen dining area from this lounge room. And this space, I mean, it was absolutely chaotic in here. It was just full of wood and just old derelict bits and pieces. And so clearing it out alone was a great move. But the fireplace itself is an old piece of stone. The hearthstone on the bottom is a piece of stone that I found at a really old abbey. It was in the garden and they were selling off bits of stone. So it's ancient, and my neighbour, who's a farmer, helped me move it with his tractor, and much huffing and puffing into place, a bit like the Egyptians built the pyramids. It was such relief when it was finally sitting on its plinth. And then the fireplace itself, we bought, reclaimed. It was for sale in the junkyard and is a beautiful fireplace, French made. And you can open the door or you can have it as a slow combustion fire. Here, again, this is a really inexpensive rug that I picked up secondhand. It just, tonally, it had all the colors I wanted, just some pattern without being too loud in the space. And I had my carpenter make this coffee table, and this is an old prune drying rack that sits on top of it, which is perfect because it just gives that lovely old patinaed timber slatted surface. And then, an old trunk for a bit of an extension to the coffee table, little stools at the end that are perfect if you want somewhere to put a drink, but you don't necessarily want to clutter the space with lots of side tables. So this here is an old basket that came from a factory. So it was for moving goods that were being manufactured around the factory. So it's on little trolley legs, and I just had a piece of glass cut to put on top to create a table. And it's great. It can house yet more junk. There's potential for many, many more pieces to live on top of it. But it's lovely to be able to see through the table, through the glass, into the trolley itself. And then this table here in the corner came all the way from Australia. And when I was working for a magazine in Australia called Australian Country Style, one of my jobs was to find artists and do feature stories. And one day I discovered this amazing man called Joe Vinks, who was collecting sticks out of the Australian bush and making stick furniture in that kind of 1920s, 30s style. And so not only is it a beautiful piece of furniture, but it's made from Australian sticks. And I love it. I absolutely love it. So that's a very special table that is a part of one of my chapters of life. So the staircase was made by an amazing carpenter, local carpenter. And a lot of Béarnese houses have verandas with these beautifully designed balustrades. So I went and photographed a number of old houses and just sketched a basic design for the banister. And he came back with this staircase fully assembled, and it was such a joy when he installed it, because it's beyond my wildest dreams what I was actually ever imagined for this space. But again, I just painted it with chalk paint from Authentico, and I think it just links the spaces beautifully, because obviously this opening never existed. So we cut this opening to give you the access for the staircase to the second floor. So this is the mezzanine that we cut into the original first floor and continued on these balustrades that were on the staircase. But it's really lovely to look down onto the kitchen island and outside, and it leads through to one of the bedrooms. I actually found these doors in an old house that were being sold, and so they were just, we actually made the entrance to suit them. So this bedroom was once home to more than a few mice and old sacks of corn and whatnot. And I started from the ground up in here and scrubbed years and years of debris off these old oak floorboards. And we then insulated and plastered the walls, and the walls have covered in another colourway of Adelaide, named after Adelaide the poodle. This time it's a beautiful terracotta colour and green, which I love. And the bed here, which is also kind of tonally kind of works in with that, but the bed is a beautiful mohair velvet. It came out of a wonderful old house in Biarritz, a huge old house, and I just painted again in traditional chalk paint the wood, just to kind of bring it down a notch and make it a little bit more soft. And I love the way we were able to push the beds in and make a niche above the bed head itself. And in that niche I've got some reading lights. But really most of the time it's just lamplight in here, and the bed itself is again just layers of wood block quilts and cushions. And yeah, it's a super cozy place that people guests love to come and stay. If I had to think of something that made a house come alive and really give it soul, I think that's also another very easy question to answer. It's authenticity. I think you instantly feel it when you walk into a home, however humble, and I have in my travels visited homes with dirt floor that feel extraordinary, and it's being true to yourself as an individual, as a family, and putting a truly authentic take on your environment. I think that comes from designing it for yourselves, and that's the key, yeah. So when I think about home, I think, weirdly enough, as a designer, I think the concept of home is as much transportable as it is material. So I sometimes feel at home picking up the phone and hearing my husband's voice or my children. That is the feeling of home. It's truly a feeling. It's not so much about having the perfect things to go inside your four walls. It is something you feel and other people who visit feel. Yeah, it's just a feeling.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content, shopping guides, and so much more.